What if someone mocks you in public? If they undermine your work or question your abilities? What if someone calls you weak or wrong or foolish to your face? The instinct to defend yourself rises instantly, to strike back with equal force. But there is another path. You can fight back, or you can do something harder, stay free. Nearly 2,000 years ago, an emperor faced the same human struggles we face today. Marcus Aurelius didn't silence his enemies. He silenced his ego. And in doing so, he discovered a freedom that most of us spend our lives searching for. Picture this. Someone criticizes your work in front of everyone, questioning not just what you've done, but your fundamental ability. Your face flushes. Your heart pounds. Something rises within you. A need to defend, to counterattack, to prove them wrong. That rising tide? That's the ego, the first to flare when we're insulted. Marcus Aurelius understood this reaction intimately. Though he was emperor of Rome, among the most powerful men alive, he spent evenings alone with his journal, wrestling with the same internal battles we face. He reminds himself, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. This is the central insight. Most insults stem from ignorance. The Stoic recognizes that an insult reveals the limitations of the person delivering it, not the person receiving it. But this recognition doesn't arise naturally. Our first instinct is to feel the sting, to absorb the blow as if it were a physical attack. Marcus writes, "If thou art pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs thee, but thy own judgment about it. And it is in thy power to wipe out this judgment now." This is perhaps the most powerful Stoic teaching. We are harmed not by the insult itself, but by our judgment that we have been harmed. The insult exists as words in the air. It becomes an injury only when we accept it as such. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be harmed, Marcus writes. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. The Stoic's path, then, begins with recognizing that our ego is what converts words into wounds. The first step to freedom from insult is understanding that we participate in our own injury. We can choose a different response, but this isn't easy. We've spent our lives believing that our identity, our reputation, our social standing are essential parts of ourselves. When someone attacks these things, it feels like they're attacking us. Marcus understood this tendency too. He writes, "Whatever this is that I am, it is a little flesh and breath, and the ruling part. The ruling part, the mind, is what matters. Everything else is subject to opinion, to fortune, to the whims of others." When we let go of identifying with these external things, insults lose their power. When someone criticizes your work, they haven't touched your ability to choose virtue. When they mock your appearance, they haven't diminished your capacity for reason. When they question your worth, they demonstrate only their own confusion about what truly matters. Marcus returns often to a critical question: what can truly harm a person? He writes, "Nothing is evil which is according to nature." And further, that which does not make a man worse than he was also does not make his life worse, nor does it harm him either from without or from within. This is a radical proposition. If something doesn't make you a worse person, less just, less temperate, less wise, less courageous, then it hasn't harmed you at all. If someone does wrong, it is to himself that he does the wrong, Marcus reminds us. If someone does you wrong, it is his own misfortune. The person throwing insults is revealing their own character, not yours. They show themselves to be unkind, impatient, perhaps dishonest. The wrong is happening to them, not to you, unless you choose to respond in kind. Marcus puts it plainly. The wrongdoer does wrong to himself by making himself bad. Every insult, every injury inflicted on another makes the one delivering it worse. This is the true harm. Consider his counsel. When another blames thee or hates thee, or when men say about thee anything injurious, approach their poor souls, penetrate within, and see what kind of men they are. Thou wilt discover that there is no reason to take any trouble, that these men may have this or that opinion about thee. Look deeper, Marcus advises. See the person behind the insult, their fears, their insecurities, their limited understanding. When you recognize the humanity behind the attack, it becomes harder to take offense, easier to respond with compassion. But this doesn't mean Marcus advocates weakness or submission. He was, after all, commander of Rome's legions. His is not a philosophy of retreat, but of proper focus. He's telling us, put your energy where it matters. And what others think of you simply doesn't matter compared to your own virtue. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, he writes. This is the attitude of someone immune to mere insult, focused instead on growth. The barb that carries truth becomes a gift. The barb that doesn't becomes irrelevant. The insult is not real unless you let it settle in your mind. It has no power except what you give it. Such as are thy habitual thoughts, Marcus writes, such also will be the character of thy mind, for the soul is dyed by the thoughts. If you dwell on the insult, replay it. Nurture your resentment, your soul takes on that color. If instead you recognize it for what it is, the product of another's ignorance or pain, and let it go, your mind remains clear, untroubled, free. A common misunderstanding of Stoicism is that it teaches emotional suppression, bottling up feelings, pretending not to care. Critics might say it promotes a kind of emotional dishonesty, encouraging us to deny what we truly feel. Marcus Aurelius would disagree. His writings reveal a man intimately aware of his own emotions, from frustration to grief to anger. The difference lies not in feeling these emotions, but in what happens next. When thou art offended with any man's fault, he writes, forthwith turn to thyself, and reflect in what like manner thou dost err thyself. This is not suppression but redirection, from outward blame to inward reflection. Stoicism is not about pretending insults don't hurt. It's about developing the skill to separate reaction from reality, to create space between what happens and how you respond. Marcus acknowledges, this thou must always bear in mind. What is the nature of the whole, and what is my nature? Our nature includes feeling pain when insulted, feeling anger when wronged. The Stoic doesn't deny these feelings, but sees them clearly for what they are, automatic reactions, not commands that must be obeyed. Let not the impression which is made on the sense of pain affect thy judgment, he counsels. Feel the pain, acknowledge it, but don't let it dictate your response. This is the fundamental difference between endurance and suppression. Suppression is denial. Endurance is acknowledgement without surrender. The Stoic feels the sting but doesn't amplify it, doesn't feed it, doesn't let it determine their actions. Imagine someone publicly criticizes your work, calling it incompetent. The pain of this is real. Marcus would never deny that. But what happens next is what matters. Do you respond with defensiveness, with counterattack? Or do you pause, feel the sting, and then respond from a place of reason rather than reaction? How much more damage anger and grief do than the things that cause them? Marcus notes. The initial insult might hurt, but our rumination, our reactive anger, our need to defend our ego, these cause far more suffering than the original offense. He captures this perfectly. If thou art pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs thee, but thy own judgment about it. The insult stings, yes, but the meaning you assign to it, that you've been diminished, humiliated, shown to be unworthy, that's where the real suffering lies. Marcus never denies frustration. He just never lets it lead. The emotions come, he acknowledges them, and then he chooses his response based on reason and virtue, not on the temporary heat of feeling. This is perhaps best illustrated in his counsel on anger. The best way of avenging thyself is not to become like the wrongdoer. Feel the anger, but don't become anger. Feel the hurt, but don't become hurt. This is the essence of Stoic endurance. In one of his most powerful passages, Marcus writes, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This isn't just ethical guidance, it's psychological liberation. When someone insults you and you respond in kind, you've allowed them to determine your behavior. You've surrendered your autonomy. But when you respond with dignity, with kindness even, you demonstrate true freedom. The freedom to choose your own character, regardless of how others treat you. Marcus advises, the best way of avenging thyself is not to become like the wrongdoer. When you match insult for insult, you become a mirror of what you claim to despise. The person who insulted you has now succeeded twice, once in delivering the insult, and once in making you behave as they do. This isn't about being passive or weak. It's about recognizing what true strength looks like. Marcus tells us, how much more damage the anger and grief do than the things that cause them. When you respond to insult with insult, you multiply the harm. To the other person, to the relationship, but most importantly, to yourself. Be like the promontory against which the waves continually break, he writes, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. This is the image of Stoic response to injury, not absence of feeling, but presence of steadiness. The waves still crash, but they don't erode what matters. Consider his advice. When a man has done thee any wrong, immediately consider with what opinion about good or evil he has done wrong. For when thou hast seen this, thou wilt pity him, and wilt neither wonder nor be angry. This is strength, to walk through fire and carry water, to receive injury and offer understanding, not because you're afraid to fight back, but because you're strong enough not to need to. Marcus doesn't advise weakness. He advises quiet power. The power to choose your response rather than having it chosen for you by the behavior of others. He writes, "It is in our power to have no opinion about a thing, and not to be disturbed in our soul. For things themselves have no natural power to form our judgments. You have the power to decide what meaning to assign to an insult, including the power to assign it no meaning at all." This approach transforms interactions. When someone insults you expecting defensiveness or counterattack, and instead receives composure and even kindness, it changes the dynamic entirely. As Marcus puts it, The best way of avenging thyself is not to become like the wrongdoer. This isn't passive acceptance, it's active reclamation of your autonomy. It's stating, through your response, that you will not have your character determined by the behavior of others. You choose who you are. For Marcus Aurelius, insults weren't merely unpleasant interactions. They were tests, opportunities to practice what philosophy teaches. He writes, "Whatever anyone does or says, I must be good." This is the test. Can you maintain your character regardless of provocation? Insults test your training more than hardship. Many people can endure physical discomfort, fatigue, even danger with composure. Fewer can maintain their equilibrium when their ego is threatened. This is where philosophical training proves its worth. Marcus reminds himself, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being." And part of that work, he understood, was navigating the slights, criticisms, and outright attacks that come with human interaction. "Does anyone despise me?" he asks. That is his concern, but I will see to it that I will not be found doing or saying anything worthy of contempt. Your emotional self-control is most visible when attacked. Anyone can appear virtuous when treated well. Character reveals itself under pressure. He writes, "Say to thyself in the early morning, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." He prepares himself not for physical challenges, but for the emotional tests presented by difficult people. And he prepares not by planning counterattacks, but by grounding himself in his own principles. What does it say about you when you do not bite back? Not that you're weak, but that you're governed by reason rather than impulse. Not that you lack courage, but that you place more value on maintaining your character than on defending your image. Marcus understood that our response to insult reveals our progress in philosophical training. He points out, "It is the act of a madman to pursue impossibilities, and it is impossible to control what others say about you. The only possible path is to control your response. Remember," he writes, "that to change thy opinion and to follow him who corrects thy error is as consistent with freedom as it is to persist in thy error." This is a profound insight. True freedom lies not in defending every position you take, but in being open to correction, prioritizing truth over ego. When insulted, ask yourself, what is this a test of? Often, it's a test of whether your sense of worth comes from within or depends on the approval of others. It's a test of whether you're governed by reason or by reactivity. It's a test of whether your philosophy is merely theoretical or deeply embodied. As Marcus puts it, how easy it is to repel and to wipe away every impression which is troublesome or unsuitable, and immediately to be in all tranquility. This skill, to receive an insult without absorbing it, to hear criticism without being destabilized by it, this is what philosophical training builds. Every insult is an opportunity to practice detachment from externals, to reaffirm that your worth comes from your character, not from others' opinions. Every criticism is a chance to demonstrate, to yourself most of all, that you are governed by reason, not by impulse. In this light, those who insult you become unwitting partners in your philosophical development. As Marcus might see it, they offer you the gift of practice. How do we translate Marcus Aurelius's ancient wisdom into daily practice? How do we build the capacity to respond to insults with quiet strength rather than reactive defense? First, practice the pause before response. When someone insults or criticizes you, give yourself 5 seconds, just 5, before responding. In that brief pause, take a breath and ask yourself, is this my ego speaking, or is this truth? This tiny space between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. Marcus writes, how easy it is to repel and to wipe away every impression which is troublesome or unsuitable, and immediately to be in all tranquility. This wiping away begins with the pause, the moment when you recognize the impression for what it is, before it takes hold of you. Second, keep what we might call an insult journal. This isn't about dwelling on injuries, but about learning from them. When someone says something that stings, write it down later. Note what was said, how you felt, how you responded, and what you learned. Look for patterns. Do certain types of criticism trigger you more than others? This awareness is the beginning of freedom. Marcus advises, be not disturbed, for all things are according to the nature of the universal. By recording your reactions, you begin to see them not as inevitable responses, but as habits that can be observed and ultimately transformed. Third, develop a personal mantra drawn from Marcus's writings. Something like, what is not under my control is not mine to carry. Or, the best revenge is to be unlike the person who caused the injury. Having these phrases ready in your mind provides an anchor when emotions threaten to carry you away. Marcus writes, consider what men are when they are eating, sleeping, generating, easing themselves, and so forth. Then what kind of men they are when they are imperious and arrogant, or angry and scolding from their elevated place. This perspective taking is a powerful antidote to taking insults too seriously. Fourth, shift your mindset to view insults as training. When someone criticizes you harshly, instead of thinking, I'm under attack, try thinking, this is practice for detachment. You're in a philosophical gymnasium, and difficult people are providing you with resistance training for your character. Marcus himself used this approach. He writes, does someone despise me? That is his problem. But I will see to it that I won't be found doing or saying anything contemptible. Does someone hate me? That is his problem. By reframing insults as the other person's issue, he liberates himself from the burden of their judgment. Finally, remember that responding to insults with equanimity isn't about appearing unaffected to others. It's about being genuinely unshaken within yourself. It's not a performance of calm, but a true internal steadiness. Marcus reminds himself, look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig. The capacity to respond to insult with dignity isn't something you need to acquire. It's already within you, waiting to be uncovered through practice and reflection. These practices don't guarantee that insults won't sting. They will. But with consistent attention, the sting becomes momentary rather than lingering, a passing sensation rather than a defining experience. As Marcus puts it, the pain which is intolerable carries us off, but that which lasts a long time is tolerable. We've traveled a long way with Marcus Aurelius, from the initial sting of insult to the freedom that comes from choosing our response. We've seen that the Stoic path isn't one of emotional suppression or passive acceptance, but of active reclamation of our autonomy. The next time someone mocks you, undermines your work, or questions your worth, remember, you stand at a crossroads. You can follow the path of reactivity, matching insult for insult, surrendering your character to the momentary heat of emotion. Or you can follow the path Marcus illuminated, feeling the sting, yes, but choosing your response from a place of reason and principle. This is the true power of the Stoic response to insult and injury. Not that you don't feel, but that your feelings don't dictate your actions. Not that you don't care what others think, but that you care more about who you are. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. These words, written nearly 2,000 years ago, offer us a path to freedom today. Freedom from the tyranny of others' opinions. Freedom from the exhausting cycle of attack and counterattack. Freedom to choose our own character regardless of how we're treated. This is strength over ego, the quiet power that comes not from defending our image, but from living our values. We've learned how to remain free in the face of insult, how to maintain our character when others question our worth. But what happens when we face a different kind of pain? What happens when grief strikes? When we lose something or someone dear to us? When the wound comes not from an enemy's words, but from life's inevitable losses? In the next video, we'll face one of Stoicism's greatest tests: love, loss, and the Stoic grief response. Join us as we explore how Marcus Aurelius navigated the waters of grief without drowning in them, and how we might do the same.